Welcome you all to Believers IAS Academy. And in this today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing a very interesting topic, which is the Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. Of course, now if you're wondering as to why we are discussing this particular topic, it's not because of an issue which is in news from about yesterday or the present relevance, but it is that particular issue which has been a bigger or a major issue right from, let's say, 2019, right? So this is one thing inside the parliament which has always been a biggest drawback, and today we will try and understand what that is, and it is all revolving around the office of deputy speaker, or the role of deputy speaker. So yes, today's video we will discuss about what deputy speaker is, his roles, his functions, constitutional provisions, way forward, everything. Probably we'll also solve one prelims questions as well, right? So why is it in use? As I said, not because of anything of present instant reaction, but because of a relevant situation in the Lok Sabha of India, where we have this vacancy in the deputy speaker's office from about 6 years, and this becomes a very welcome you all to Believers IAS Academy, and in this today's welcome you all to Believers IAS Academy, and in this today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing about the role of deputy speaker, or the post of deputy speaker, with respect to the Lok Sabha of India. And now, if you are actually wondering as to why we are discussing about the deputy speaker, or what is the issue, why is it in news? See, it is in news from more than 5-6 years now, and it's a very problematic issue that is currently hemming around the Lok Sabha of India as to the office of deputy speaker, because it has been more than 6 years, or the office of deputy speaker, especially in the Lok Sabha, is vacant for almost like 6 years, both in the 17th and the 18th Lok Sabha tenure, which is highly problematic, because the role of a deputy speaker is, of course, not is not a subordinate to the speaker of Lok Sabha, but also constitution separately categorically mentions the role of deputy speaker in the Lok Sabha, especially when the absence of speaker is seen in the Lok Sabha, right? So now this becomes absolutely important to understand the role of the office of deputy speaker and his functions, his importances, right, and his roles, powers, constitutional provisions, right? And also we will try and understand why this role or this office is still kept vacant. Okay, and moving forward, we will also try and solve one question from the deputy speaker, because every year UPSC has been asking questions from the parliament chapter, and so as to speak, the speaker is one of UPSC's favorite topics, amongst which the questions gets framed every year. And it wouldn't be a shocking surprise that there is a question on deputy speaker this time, because very important for us to study the office or the concept of deputy speaker. Okay, so now briefly talking about his role. Okay, what is the important role of the deputy speaker? He is very crucial for the maintaining the accountability, smooth functioning, and the balance of power in the Lok Sabha, especially in the absence of speaker. Maybe the speaker is, let's say, the speaker post is vacant, right, is absent, and this is the one person who takes over the precedence of the Lok Sabha, which is kept vacant for almost like 6 years. Okay, and also another important key thing to keep in mind as to who becomes the deputy speaker, because that is where the entire issue revolves around, because based on the consensus, it is the person, the MP from the opposition, who becomes the deputy speaker, because we have a speaker post, and this speaker post is usually taken by the people, by the MP from the majority ruling party. This is the major consensus. And the deputy speaker usually is from the opposition party, which you can see, and this ensures balance of power. Okay, having one person as the speaker from the majority party and having another person from the opposition who is also the deputy speaker kind of maintains the balance of power and also ensures the continuity of Lok Sabha, right? So a lot of functions, a lot of powers of deputy speaker that we have to discuss. It is not something that can be ignored, right? And this vacancy, right, is because of the ruling government is reluctant to offer it to the opposition, is what the present argument is, that since the deputy speaker has to be from the opposition, right, the present ruling party is not willing to select any one particular person to be posted as the deputy speaker, is what the present argument is. However, whatever the issue may be, whatever the argument that we hear, it is ultimately important to make sure that everything happens with respect to the constitutional provisions, by by ensuring that it does not go against the interests of the people or the Lok Sabha, right? So also it weakens the principle of power sharing, right? It is all one and the same. Okay, whatever we are discussing is because of the importance of this particular position in the Lok Sabha, which is the deputy speaker. So in this particular video, we will try and understand everything in detail. So even before that, what is the role of deputy speaker, or what are the constitutional provisions of deputy speaker? 3 articles play a very important role which has to be remembered, right? One is Article 93, which specifically states that Lok Sabha must select or elect a speaker and also a deputy speaker as soon as may be possible, and it has also clearly not given any particular time limit. So of course this is also one of the drawback as to why this delay is, right? But also keep in mind Article 93, very important. It is that article which talks about the presence or the availability or the necessity of the role of speaker and deputy speaker. So now, speaker and deputy speaker, when did this office first come into being, right? So we have to also keep in mind that it was in the Act of 1919 that the very first introduction of the speaker and deputy speaker offices were made. Of course, the term speaker and deputy speaker were not right away used right from 1919, but earlier it was famously called as the president and the deputy president. And later in the year 1935, with the Government of India Act 1935, the nomenclature, the names were changed to the present, what we famously call the speaker and the deputy speaker. Okay, of course these two things are also important. And Article 94, which talks about the deputy speaker's resignation, his tenure, his removal, disqualifications. Okay, Article 94 also is important. And with respect to the state legislative assemblies, it is Article 179. And another important article, 178 of the Indian Constitution, talks about the office or the provision for a deputy speaker in the legislative assembly, which is also important to keep in mind. Then talking about the Article 95-96, it talks about the powers when presiding or handling the discipline and the decorum of the Lok Sabha, and also it talks about the voting rules of the vice president. So these are the important articles you need to keep in mind. One is Article 93, 94, 95, 96, and 178 is also important. 179 with respect to the state legislative assembly is also absolutely important. And Government of India Act 1935, which gave this nomenclature, speaker and deputy speaker, absolutely important. And the very first instance when this was the office was created was in the 1919, where it was not officially called as speaker or deputy speaker, but it was called as president and deputy president. Okay, so this much is with respect to the constitutional provisions. And now talking about the tenure, right? What is the tenure with which the office of deputy speaker goes forward? or even before that, we have to also try and understand the election process as to who becomes the member or person to be qualified as the deputy speaker of the Lok Sabha. So first and foremost thing, the date of the election of the deputy speaker is fixed by the speaker himself, and is notified for the members. Usually what happens is, the very first session the election does not happen. It usually happens in the second session, but there is no absolute rule that it has to happen only on the second session. But based on the consensus, it usually happens in the very second session of the Lok Sabha. But that is what the issue is, that from last 6 years we don't have any elections or any selections that has happened to the deputy speaker role. But usually it is the speaker, after the election of the speaker, right? The speaker decides a particular date for the elections to be conducted for the deputy speaker office, and it is elected from amongst the Lok Sabha members with a simple majority. This is also important to keep in mind. Okay, so the Lok Sabha members from amongst, right, amongst the newly elected Lok Sabha members, they elect the member, and basically that member usually is from the opposition party and with a simple majority. Now talking about the tenure, he holds the office until the Lok Sabha is dissolved, or unless the person is removed, or by the way that he wants to resign by writing it to the speaker, right? Unless and until that kind of circumstance ever comes, he continues his office till the dissolution of the Lok Sabha, and he also vacates if no longer, as in if what are the provisions on which he does not, let's say he vacates his office. One is if he loses his membership as an MP, or he resigns by writing it to the speaker of the Lok Sabha, or removed by what? An absolute majority. So it's not a special majority or specific majority, it's the absolute majority which you have to keep in mind. Now talking about the powers and functions of the office of the deputy speaker, one is, we know that his primary function, the main function of a deputy speaker, is to preside over the Lok Sabha when the speaker is absent or his seat is vacant. Okay, this is an absolute important role or a function of the deputy speaker when he presides over the Lok Sabha, especially when the speaker of the Lok Sabha is absent. Another important key thing to keep in mind, that although he presides over the speaker, the office of deputy speaker or the deputy speaker of the Lok Sabha is not a subordinate to the speaker, right? He is not a subordinate to speaker. Why? Because we have separate, it's simply to understand, you just have to keep one thing in mind, that office of deputy speaker or deputy speaker is not someone who is appointed by the speaker, right? He's not appointed by the speaker. When we just went back in the different slides, article 93, we just studied that constitution separately mentions about the office of deputy speaker. It says Lok Sabha must elect a speaker and a deputy speaker as soon as as soon as possible. So nowhere it is mentioned that the deputy speaker is appointed by the speaker himself, right? So it is an independent body, having an independent role, right? Functions. So hence he is not an assistant, or a subordinate to the Lok Sabha speaker. Okay, that is also very important key thing to remember. Why? Because ultimately he is not appointed by the speaker. Okay, and of course he has his own powers. In fact, even he has certain provisions where even deputy speaker can preside over the joint sitting, right? And also he is an MP. At the end of the day, the deputy speaker is an MP, right? He also has powers of casting vote, which we will study in further points. So yeah, assumes chairmanship. Another important point, right? He assumes chairmanship of any particular legislative committee by default if he is a part of it. This is also a very important function of the deputy speaker, where if he is appointed as the member of any parliamentary committee, right, he automatically becomes the chairman of that particular committee. For example, committee of privileges, committee of rules, or whatever, any committee for that matter. If he is a part of it, he automatically becomes the chairman of that particular committee. So that is the reason why we were discussing that he's the office of deputy speaker is not subordinate to Lok Sabha. Okay, so he has his own specific functions, and also constitution specifically categorically mentions that there has to be a separate election or separate selection mode for the role of for the office of deputy speaker. Okay, now another function, another important power, he can participate in debates and vote as an MP, especially when the speaker is in office, right? When the speaker is in office, the deputy speaker is just like any other member of parliament, but that's what this point says. The speaker is presiding. He's just, MP. He has the power to vote, and he's just like another MP. But when presiding, when the speaker office is vacant, when he is presiding, right, he can vote only in case of a tie. It doesn't have the vote in the first instance, right? So this is another power and functions of the deputy speaker. And in order to ensure the independence, of this particular office, right, the salaries of the deputy speaker is directly charged on the consolidated fund of India. Means parliament approval is required to do any alterations with respect to the salary of the deputy speaker also. So this is also very important to keep in mind. The salary of the deputy speaker is charged on the consolidated fund of India. Okay, so these are some of the important functions and powers of the deputy speaker. Now, talking about his precedence, right? He is ranked 10th in the office official protocol, and he is also ranked same as the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha and Union Minister of State and members of Planning Commission, right? Historically, we had this Planning Commission, and the office of deputy speaker is pretty much equivalent to the deputy chairman of Rajya Sabha and union ministers and so on and so forth. Okay, so these are some of the important very crucial things that you have to keep in mind as to what is the importance of this office. And since this office is vacant since 17th Lok Sabha, it is absolutely important to ensure that this trend actually discontinues, right? So that is the reason why we are studying as to why this office matters and why is there a delay, right? Now, talking about the political implications of this particular issue, as to what is the near implication on India by having this. The very first thing is the misinterpretation of Article 73, right? So the Article 93, which talks about the elections, or which talks about having a speaker or a deputy speaker as soon as possible, is in itself very wide kind of an article, which is not exclusively mentioning as to the importance of the office of deputy speaker. So which makes it very easy for the delay to happen indefinitely, because of the certain words and sections that are used, or this is the exact word which is used in the article, which makes it very possible for the delay, right? If there was something like must, that office of speaker and the deputy speaker must be selected by the newly elected Lok Sabha within so and so time, right? Now this delay wouldn't have happened. So one is the misinterpretation of Article 93, the very act, the very article itself, the nature of the article clearly by stating that as soon as maybe, right, gives it a very vague sort of an idea as to the office of deputy speaker, making it not that important, right? And the next near implication is the erosion of democratic balance, as we discussed in the very first slide, right? The authority which gets concentrated in the speaker, usually he is from the ruling party, right? The speaker, as we discussed, is from the ruling party. So the authority of the entire Lok Sabha, right, is pretty much concentrated on the speaker himself. Now let's imagine if the speaker office is vacant, is absent, right? What happens to the parliament, right? There is no one to preside over the Lok Sabha. So obviously it kind of is eroding the democratic balance. We have borrowed this particular from the Westminster model, and obviously the parliamentary system needs a speaker as the very important person to preside over the Lok Sabha. Now if the speaker is absent, and imagine what happens to the Lok Sabha, the continuation, right? The smooth transition of the business in the parliament, the Lok Sabha especially, doesn't happen. Why? Because we don't have a deputy speaker. Okay, so that is what it says, that authority concentration happens in the speaker alone, and in absence of speaker, there's no one to take care of the entire Lok Sabha, and it erodes the democratic balance. Next is the threat to parliamentary stability, right? A risk of crisis if speaker resigns, as we discussed, right? And it also undermines the consensus politics. There are like a lot of consensus, right, in the Indian Constitution. Not everything is exclusively mentioned. We follow a lot of things based on consensus. Like, for example, we have the speaker always coming from the opposition party. The speaker always coming from the ruling party, and then we have the deputy speaker who usually is from the opposition party, in order to maintain that balance or counterbalance, that power dynamics. But since we are not at all following that consensus, now it obviously breaks the spirit of cooperation in the entire Lok Sabha, right? So that is another important thing that you have to keep in mind. Okay, and talking about consensus, it's always very important from the examination point of view to keep in mind all those things that are purely based on consensus and that is purely or exclusively mentioned in the Constitution. UPSC loves making questions in these dynamics, where it asks few statements which are usually followed based on consensus, but actually it would have been from the Constitution. It would have clearly mentioned in the Constitution. So those intricate details are very important to keep in mind when studying. Okay, so this is also one of the example where it is based on the consensus, the practice, right, where the deputy speaker is always from the opposition. So Constitution does not give a clear definition as to who becomes or who should become the deputy speaker. Okay, so these are the implications of this particular issue, or the vacancy of the deputy speaker. So at the end, what is the way forward? What are the things need to be done? First and foremost thing is to amend that particular article and set legal timelines for election of the deputy speaker along with the speaker, especially after the new Lok Sabha is formed. Very important, and the first most important thing. Then it is also important to respect opposition's right to hold that particular post. Now, why do we have that consent? So in fact, we had this deputy speaker ever since 1990 to even 2014. We had the deputy speaker from the opposition party ever since 1990 to 2014. We had an office of deputy speaker. Who was the last deputy speaker that way? It was Mr. Tambidurai, right? And ever since after 2014, 2019, and even the 17th and 18th Lok Sabha, we don't have the office of deputy speaker at all. So if we have maintained this consent ever since 1990, and it actually denotes how important the office of opposition is, right? So we have to respect that opposition's role in the entire Lok Sabha, at least by considering the post of deputy speaker, right? That is one important way forward. Then talking about it, the public and media, which usually talks about most of the things, important ones, but also this is also very important, right? This is also very important, especially as far as the Lok Sabha is concerned. So even the media and the public should also be aware, they should have the awareness as to the importance of deputy speaker office, and they should also put pressure to make sure that the government stays in compliance with the constitutional conventions, right? So that is also important, or the proactive role required from the public and also the media. Then considering amending the rules of procedure to prevent prolonged vacancy. This is also very important. The Rule 8 of Rules of Procedure, right, is what delineates or talks about the deputy speaker and the vacancy. So it is also important to amend that particular procedure so that it clearly states that prolonged vacancy, especially for that post, cannot happen, right? So this is all that we have to know, and of course all these things are very important considering the present way in which the legislature is functioning, especially with respect to the kind of new bills that the parliament is trying to introduce, especially the Lok Sabha. So when these many changes are happening with respect to the present requirement, this is also absolutely important. The office of deputy speaker is also something that cannot be ignored because it's a constitutional post, right? It was there right from the genesis of the constitution. So we have to ensure even this particular issue is not ignored, right? So at the end, we have to keep in mind that parliamentary democracy thrives not on majorities alone, right? Parliamentary democracy is not just about majority rule. It is also about respecting the minority voice as well, right? I hope this particular line covers up everything in the importance of this particular issue today. Okay, so this is all for the video. I hope you have understood what the role of deputy speaker, his office, functions, roles and powers and all of that. Now let's at the end solve one prelims question, right? So the question goes, with reference to the office of deputy speaker of the Lok Sabha, consider the following statements. Statement 1, the deputy speaker is subordinate to the speaker in all matters of parliamentary procedure. Second statement, when the office of the speaker is vacant, the deputy speaker performs the duties of the speaker. Third statement, the deputy speaker is elected from amongst the members of the Lok Sabha. Now, of this, which of the statements given are true? Now, if we analyze statement 2, when the office of the speaker is vacant, the deputy speaker performs the duties of the speaker. Yes, it is correct. Statement 3, the deputy speaker is elected from amongst the members of the Lok Sabha. Yes, even that is also correct. Now look at the statement 1, the deputy speaker is subordinate to the speaker, correct? But in all matters of the parliamentary procedure, is that so? No. The statement is very extreme, and obviously, the speaker is not equivalent to the deputy speaker in all parliamentary procedures, right? For example, speaker gets to decide, the money bill, right? Speaker gets to decide on the question of disqualification of MPs, right, under the defection, right? So does a deputy speaker have all of those powers? No, obviously not. So the first statement is wrong. So the correct answer is B. Okay, so that's all for this particular video today. I hope you have liked the video. So for more such informative content, please do consider subscribing to Believers IAS YouTube channel, and for more such informative video, stay tuned. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.